All right. My name is Aubrielle Weaver, and I studied microbiology at San Diego State University. I was staying at the Airbnb with some of the other interns that have already presented. I worked with Greg Birking. He was a PhD, is a PhD student on working on microbiology with cystic fibrosis patients. And a little bit of virology. He's actually going to finish his PhD in March. And I also did a tiny bit of virology, but I wasn't successful at that, so I'll be focusing more on the microbiology side. I was in Dr. Forrest Bauer's lab. I didn't really get to meet him until the last week, but it was still cool to meet a professor and get some advice from him. And I was interested in medical research, so that's why I did this internship. What I did is I studied microbiology with kefir grains. If you don't know what kefir is, it's this like fermented, almost like yogurt milk dairy product. After doing this, I know I will never drink it because it's really gross, because it has fungus and bacteria in it, but all of these organisms, they support each other, and I was able to see actually a really cool structure of that. And so the picture right there is some media I made to grow bacteria. That was the first thing I ever did in the lab. And it was okay, but I made better media later on, and I had a high contamination rate, but in the end it was successful. This is called an autoclave. This is how you sterilize glass bottles, your media. That way you can start fresh and not have foreign bacteria that's not supposed to be growing there. These were some plates I did. This one I spread evenly with some sterilized water, and this is one way. This was me trying to see if I could find a plaque, which is basically a sign that there's a virus, also known as a phage. And then this was streaking the bacteria with a micropipette tip. This is how you isolate it. So then later on, I would take one of these little colonies and streak it onto another plate until I got a pure sample of bacteria. And this one, I believe, was pure. Oh, whoops. There we go. I also worked a little bit with the DNA. DNA is really hard to work with, so I wasn't successful at this either. I had high contamination in this, but it's super difficult to do anyways, so me being able to get any result at all was impressive. And I was working with bacteria that it's really hard to get DNA from, so that I got any was also impressive. This was me taking DNA sample and loading it into this well thing. It might be hard to see, but there's tiny little holes right there. And if you're at Montrose High School, you've maybe done the biomedical classes, and you've maybe done some of this already. So I actually had experience doing it. I just didn't know how to make the samples. This was to help amplify the DNA, because without having enough copies of the DNA, you're not going to get results. And then this was to measure concentration of DNA after breaking apart the cell. This applies to the real world because even though I was just learning basic lab skills instead of working on a project with the professor, these basic lab skills will let me be able to have a strong foundation. So later on in college, I could potentially work in a lab or get an internship at freshman year, when most of the time you can't do that as a freshman. And microbiology is important to studying diseases and how our bodies work. And without it, we wouldn't know the knowledge we have today in lots of fields in the world. And then some surprising things is bacteria do have different smells to them. One of the bacterias I isolated at first smelled like all of my other bacterias, and then one day my mentor Greg just picks up one of my plates, opens it, and smells it. And I'm like, what the hell are you doing? You're not supposed to do that. And he said, does this smell weird to you? And so I was like, and it smelled fruity, which was interesting. So we think it got contaminated by a phage that was causing the bacteria's metabolism to produce a little bit differently, causing the weird smell. And also phages are everywhere. And most of them are actually not dangerous, but they are in lots of places, which was surprising to me. Oh, whoops. Fun things I did in San Diego. I had a lot of good food. I fell in love with Yogurtland, which is a chain frozen yogurt place in California. It was pretty cheap for the amount of ice cream you could get. That was like $5, which was really nice. And I went there almost every single week. I also had ramen, and they didn't give us any silverware besides chopsticks, and that was a struggle, but it was delicious, totally worth the pain. We saw lots of beautiful sunsets. Almost every weekend, me and the other girls would go to the beach and watch the sunset. This one was actually on Natalie Lopez's last night, and we didn't plan to go there, and we found an amazing sunset, the best one all 6 weeks. And then on the last day, I decided to stay in San Diego an extra day, and me and my dad went kayaking, and that's these 3 photos. And if you go to La Jolla, I totally recommend doing the cave kayaking. It's so fun, you don't need any experience, totally worth it, and so beautiful. We saw sea lions, dolphins that were like only 6 feet away from our kayak, and so beautiful. Advice for future Pinterns, communicate with Pinhead so that they know what you want. Maybe if you have some ideas, research, give them ideas, and they can give you ideas. And that's the best way to get the internship you want. You can't just rely on them fully to like pick one for you. You have to help them out. The process of getting this internship might be tedious or might be a little bit difficult, but it's totally worth it. I totally recommend it. It's worth all of the work you have to put in for it. Bring some kind of notebook or writing supplies so you don't have to buy it later on, because California prices are much higher than ours. And it was very helpful because I did need to take some notes occasionally, and it helped me memorize certain processes of how to do different experiments. And then for Pinhead, you do have to write a blog every week, and it's due on Sunday. Instead of doing it the last minute on Sunday, work on it through the week so it can be more detailed, you remember everything, and you can have more free time on Sunday. And then thank you to everyone.